I played the best Pokemon game just to feel something. Pokemon Ranger games are classics, being most notable for scratching your DS screen to pieces. The Pokemon Ranger series has 3 titles: Pokemon Ranger, Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia, and Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs. Through these Pokemon games, we see a different side of the Pokemon franchise, through the Pokemon Rangers of course, and also operators and mechanics, but we don't care about those. In Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia, you see a whole new region that houses a training school for said jobs. So instead of getting our first Pokemon and going on a journey for 8 gym badges, we're gonna draw circles. We start off by selecting our character and doing an entrance exam to capture a Pikachu. We pass the exam with flying colors, and our teacher, Miss April, comes in to take us to class. There we meet 2 characters, Rhythmy and Keith, who end up being our best friends during the time in school. Rhythmy gives us a tour of the school and introduces us to some other characters, such as the other teacher, Mr. Kincaid, the principal, and Isaac, the iconic Smart Kid. The bell rings and we are able to go outside, and there are some wild Bidoof running around. Keith challenges us to a competition to catch the most, to see who's the better student. And unfortunately, there's no way to win. At least, I think anyways. But Keith ends up beating us by 1, and that's where our friendly rivalry starts. The 3 of us head to Ascension Square to essentially declare our friendship. At night, Rhythmy introduces us to a nighttime initiation all the students had to do. So we just have to walk around the school at night looking for 4 capture stylers and bring them to the basement. Keith comes along with us, and we manage to find the stylers easily, but while bringing them to the basement, some ghastly appear to spook us, and Mr. Kincaid finds us outside. He wasn't very impressed. So he tells us to leave, and then we see that in the room that he came out of, Isaac is helping him with something. Weird, since Kincaid said that no one was allowed down there except for him. Some time has passed, and we get a letter from our little sister telling us that our family was thinking about moving to Almia. And it happens to be outdoor class today. Whoop whoop! We get to sit outside and ask questions to a local Pokemon Ranger. There we meet Crawford, a ranger from the Vientown Ranger Base and previous graduate of the Ranger School. He just basically says how cool and awesome being a ranger is, and then heads off on a mission to seem cool. The next class, we get to try out some official stylers that have the voicemail function, and we discover that Keith didn't show up to class. Strange. As we walk outside to gain some distance to use the voicemail, we hear some voices outside to discover Keith and a mysterious guy. Keith says he stole stylers from the school, so he followed him to catch him. The guy ends up bumping into a tree, and a slackcloth falls on him. And it's pretty funny. Being the good person that we are, we capture the Pokemon to help him. Miss April shows up and we tell her the situation. She gives the thief the iconic mom speech and encourages the thief to do the right thing. Then the day comes we get to shadow real rangers at the ranger base. We're assigned with Keith to go to the Vientown Ranger Base, where Crawford works. We head out, and as soon as we get to the base, it's oddly quiet. The operator told us that the rangers were all out on a very important mission, and gives us a package that cannot be turned or shaken with the utmost importance. It was pretty intense. We meet up with the rangers to pass on the package, and it turns out it's just their lunch in a picnic basket. But we get to eat it too, so it's a fun moment. Something happens, of course, and someone comes running up saying that the Pokemon on the beach are acting strange. We all go to save the day, each capturing 1 Pokemon and saving the girl. The Munchlax we caught ended up liking us, but we couldn't keep any Pokemon, so we had to let them go, unfortunately. Finally, it is graduation day. Yay! All of our hard work has finally paid off. We head up onto the stage and suddenly there is a loud bang. Mr. Kincaid looks in the basement and suddenly 2 giant Tangrowths storm out of the basement and everyone starts running. Keith and I save the day, capturing our first boss with ease. We proceed with the graduation and end up going home to our family who have moved to Chico Village, just below Vientown. Keith ends up going to the Fiore region, and we end up going to Vientown Ranger Base. As we head our way there, Luana meets us outside. We reintroduce ourselves to the Rangers, change into our new awesome outfit, and we head on our first mission with Crawford to deliver the newspaper. You'll never guess who we see. The Munchlax we caught before. He never forgot about us, and now that we are officially a Pokemon Ranger, we can have him as our partner Pokemon. We had the option of Pachirisu, Starly, or Munchlax, but Munchlax was so cute, I couldn't resist. We clear our mission and head to bed. In the morning we get word from Barlow to head down to the beach because there's reports of the Pokemon acting weird again. We head into the cave and discover the Pokemon circling with a weird shape over their heads, and when we try to capture them, we're not able to. which is strange. We head further in and discover this mysterious rocket-looking machine thing. We click on it and we discover we can destroy it with the move Soak. So we find a Gastrodon and destroy the machine, and the Pokemon seem to return to normal. The machine ends up being too heavy for Crawford and I to carry it, so we call in the big guns. Big Bertha, the local farmer. She carries it with ease back to the ranger base for us, and Elaine, the mechanic, takes a look at the machine. The next day, Vienne Forest is on fire. Why didn't anyone wake us up? We head into the forest with Luana, capture some water-type Pokemon, get rid of some burning logs, we meet up with Crawford, and he tells us that the Blastoise has a special move called Rain Dance, which can extinguish all the fires. We find one, catch one, barely, with 2 HP left, and save the day, once again. We find this mysterious guy along with one of those mystery machines, and take him in for questioning, and we bind him up with rope just a smidgen on the tight side. And we nickname him Ollie, because he smelled like oil, I guess. We meet up with Professor Hastings, one of the heads of the Ranger Union, so he can have a look at the machines that have been making Pokemon act strangely. In the meantime, we head out with Luana to check out Blue Town, because the professor's seen some of those machines there earlier. He just assumed they were mailboxes, though. We find a red one, destroy it, and as we head through the town, we meet Brooke, the bridge keeper, who thinks he can save the day. We just let him do his thing. We destroy a green machine with a Growlithe, so the colors mean that a different move is needed to break it. We discover some shady guys who are upset we've been destroying their machines, and they called them Gigaremo units. We find a group of sketchy guys, and they send a Toxicroak to attack us, being another boss, but we catch them, and they speed off on a boat. And then Brooke comes zooming in and tries to swim after them, and failing. But we head back to the base, and it's mission clear. The next day, Big Bertha shares her iconic Moo Moo Milk Pudding and gives some to Ollie, who happens to have a change of heart after that, and decides to talk due to our kindness, so we untie him and we discover he was just hired by those sketchy guys to place the machine there just for some cash. We let him go, and Ollie has a request for us to accompany him to visit a friend in Chico Village. When we show up to the house, the friend ends up being his mom, and it's actually a really heartwarming moment. Ollie says he's home and apologizes to his mom for the things he's done and the way he acted, and his mom says that she's just glad that he's home and doesn't care what he did. So we leave it at that and head back to the base. The next day, Barlow requests us to head to Blue Town to meet up with him and Professor Hastings. They're trying to get to the Ranger Union. It's the Ranger headquarters, essentially, and they can't get there since Brooke lifted up the bridge to keep sketchy guys out. But we discover that Brooke lost the key when he went swimming, so we were tasked with going deep sea diving. We discover a Sharpedo took the key, so we follow and catch up with him to capture him. And we return the key and head with Barlow and Professor Hastings to the Ranger Union. We end up meeting Murph, who is a PR person at the Union, and a really funny character. We go with him to the Union, and we enter All True Park, and end up meeting with Isaac from Ranger School. He says he's been working at All True Tower, so he invites us for a little tour of the building. And while we browse the first floor, since we can't go anywhere else, we end up meeting the president of All True Incorporated, Blake Hall. We go back with Murph to the Union and head to the conference room. While Professor Hastings is presenting these Gigaremos to the other Rangers, we show how to destroy them. On our way back to the base, we start feeling these tremors and we investigate the cliffs. We end up seeing a sketchy person who tries to tell us he's just investigating soil, but ended up being a part of the team called Dim Sun, who's been making the Gigaremos and was using Rampardos to destroy the cliffs. We end up having to catch the Rampardos, and it was tough. Rocks falling all the time, and he was a heavy hitter. But I did it. We get our Ranger rank promoted. Woohoo! Ranger rank 4. The next day, we are tasked with the mission to teach outdoor class. It's come full circle now. And on our way to the school, we discover some dim sum minions playing around with a new machine controlling a Krogunk, who we catch and ends up being an option to have as a partner Pokemon. And since the dim sum guys have nowhere to go, they jump off the bridge and pray for the best with their swimming abilities. They're so funny. We start the outdoor class, and while the students are asking questions, the dim sum grunts come back and send some more Pokemon to attack us. So we capture them with ease, embarrass the grunts, and look awesome in front of the kids. The next morning, we discover that Barlow never came back from a mission, and we can't find him. So we're tasked with going to Boyland to find him. We go through the volcano, fighting dim sum grunts, and hear that they captured Barlow, and he's tied up, just a smidgen on the tight side, and on their cargo ship. At this point in time, we have to sneak past some grunts, and we are given a time limit of 2 minutes to get onto the ship. I accidentally failed the first time, and I'm given 3 minutes the next time, and I managed to get on the ship. Making my way through the ship, I find Barlow tied up in a random room. I find and capture an Electabuzz so we can use his field move to light up the room and untie Barlow. We decided we are going to take control of the ship, but the door to keep going is locked, so Barlow uses his field move and just rolls through the doors. We enter a room that has a very strong odor of hairspray and some outfits that look very familiar, but I just can't quite place it. We make our way to the top deck and meet the leader of Dim Sum, who was one of the teachers at the Ranger School, Mr. Kincaid. Dun dun dun! A bunch of grunts were sent to destroy us, but we easily beat them, and Kincaid tells us he took up a position at the school just to find some really smart student to help with his evil plans, and he sends his own Pokemon to attack us. Being another boss fight, this was also tough. Drapion sucks, and the capture took a while, and a few attempts. But Kincaid escapes, we take control of the ships, and turns out we're sinking. Because there's just this giant plug in the ship, so while Barlow is steering the ship, we head to fix that plug, and in order to save the Pokemon, we end up crashing into the dock at the Ranger School. The Pokemon end up being safe, and we save the day with minor damages. We end up seeing a heartfelt letter from Barlow saying how he knew this day was coming, but didn't expect it so soon. Turns out, we're being promoted to a top ranger. Top rangers are some of the best rangers in the whole world. So instead of being at the Viantown Ranger Base, we're going to be staying at the Ranger Union from now on. And we celebrate! And we're in the paper! Suck it, Keith! On our way to the Union, Wendy, another top ranger, meets up with us on her Staraptor and carries us to the Union. We learned we were the 11th out of 12 top rangers, and we discovered that the 12th is actually Keith. He's back from Fiore. So, the rivalry continues. We meet the operators of the Union and learn that they're top operators, so some of the best. And one of them happens to be Rhythmy from school. So the trio is back. We get a voicemail from Sven, the other top ranger we see in this game, and he's requesting some backup in the Chroma Highlands. So this ends up being our first mission as a top ranger with Keith. Team Dim Sum are lurking around the Highlands and are causing a lot of dark fog to be here, which ends up damaging your styler over time. As we roam through the Highlands, we use the field move Cut to free some Skarmory, catch one, and then get rid of all the dark fog. Turns out the Team Dim Sum had trapped them so no one could fix the fog and see what they were doing. We enter the Chroma ruins, find a skunk tank, and meet up with Sven, who's watching some Team Dim Sum grunts. We use the field move that Skunk Tank has and use its overpowering stench to distract and get rid of the Dim Sum grunts. We head further in the ruins and find a Spiritomb. Now this was a hard boss fight because Spiritomb is able to move all around the area and it makes it very easy to break the lines. After we capture it, we head further in and notice a giant hole in the ruins. We assumed that Spiritomb was protecting this giant shadow crystal, but unfortunately we were too late and Team Dim Sum already took it. But we head through the hole, climb a ladder, and end up at this shack. We take a look at this journal, and we discover that this shack was the original All True Incorporated, where it all started. We hear a toilet flushing behind us, and out comes a person, and it ends up being Pont from Ranger School. He ended up becoming a member of Team Dim Sum, but quit the day he joined, and just stayed at the shack ever since. We head back to the Union with the journal, and the research team takes it to decipher it since it had mentioned the shadow crystal that Team Dim Sum has been using in their Gigarimo machines. Keith, Murph, and I are watching the researchers do their thing, research, and discover the name Brighton. Murph mentions that he's heard that name before. So we head to All True Tower, look at the pictures of the previous presidents, and sure enough, second president, Brighton Hall. We enter the park and notice that there is some music going on, so we take a look, and it's the Go Rock Quads. The previously criminals now turned good rock stars. We head back to the Union with the info we found at All True Tower. We tell Professor Hastings, and Nage, the researcher, presents what they had discovered. They discovered that when All True Incorporated was an oil company, they were running out of oil, and Brighton Hall was getting worried, but ended up discovering the shadow crystals and the energy that they have. Brighton spent a lot of his time studying the crystals, so we know that all true ink and the crystals are connected. When Murph gets near the shadow crystal subject that we've been researching, he turns blue and shiny. And we discover that it's a necklace that his father gave him. And when he's near the shadow crystal, it actually starts to neutralize the effect. Wow! Professor Hastings sends us to find the lady that created Murph's necklace and whatever we can about the gem. We meet some dim sum grunts about to send a Houndoom at a civilian, so we run in front of them, capture the Houndoom to save them. Turns out that guy is actually Murph's father. He's a researcher in Hia Valley. He takes us to Shiver Camp to get warm, and we ask him about the necklace he's given Murph. He tells us the lady that made it is Miss Winter, so we head to her cabin. She tells us about this old folk tale about 3 princes, and mentions that the blue prince shined when he stood against the king, but couldn't remember much about the story. But she mentioned that she found the blue stone near Almia Castle when she was a young girl, so to Almia Castle we go. We ride in a Napoleon through Ice Lake, head into Almia Castle, and we see that there's some Team Dim Sum Grunts already there, and they're unable to get further into the castle due to this giant block of ice. We venture through the castle looking for a Pokemon to melt the ice block and eventually find a Ninetales. We melt the ice, continue further into the castle, and meet this blue character who introduces himself as Ice. Very original. He's looking for the blue gem as well, so he sends a Frostlass at us, distracts us, so he can grab the gem for himself. And after some trial and error, we capture the Frostlass. Ice decides he doesn't need the gem anymore, so he just leaves. We find 2 Riolu to open up the barrier blocking us from going to the gem. A Lucario is guarding the gem, and this was a tough fight, but we do it. Lucario entrusts the gem to us, and we bring it back to the Union. The next day, we test the blue gem's power on the roof of the Ranger Union. By theory, the gem should weaken the strength of the Shadow Crystal. The gem glows brightly, and Rhythmy reports that Pokemon rampaging in Blue Town have already started to calm down and came back to their senses, so it does work. But it doesn't seem to last for very long. Suddenly, Rhythmy and Linda both start glowing the same way that Murph did. It turns out that the necklaces Sven gave them are made from gems just like the blue one of Murph's. Linda and Rhythmy combined with Murph completely nullify the little crystal that we have, so Professor Hastings sends Keith to Harubo Desert for the yellow gem and us to Boyland Volcano for the red one. Once we get to Boyland, we get permission from the village elder to enter another part of the volcano. Now, traversing through the volcano was actually really easy. We just collected some Torkoals to travel through the lava, water Pokemon to calm down some flames, and then beat up some Dim Sum Grunts. The usual. Here, the colored character of the Sinus Trio we meet is Lavana. She's pretty and pink. I actually kind of love her character, but she's the same as Ice. She sends an Infernape at us. We capture them with the power of friendship. We head further into the Keeper of the Red Gem, a Heatran. Once again, this also sucked. He places these lava pool things on the ground and makes it hard to circle, but I did it after dying a few times. A Heatran entrusts the Red Gem to us and we make our way back to the Union. And we unlock Mime Jr. as an option for a partner Pokemon. But I stick with my Munchlax. The next day, Chairperson Irma tells us that they received word from Keith that he is going to take a while to get the yellow gem. Of course he isn't good as us. We place the red gem on the pedestal and it glows a bright fiery red, and we anxiously wait for Keith to return with the yellow gem. Being so impatient, Professor Hastings sends us to go check on Keith, and when we enter Ultra Park, the Go Rock Quads are actually performing. And there's 4 of them this time. Then, President Blake Hall arrives and takes the stage. He says that the 70th anniversary of Ultra Incorporated is almost here, and he plans to present a new kind of energy, and it is very exciting. He promises us a bright future for Almia, and promotes that the Go Rock Quads will be performing in the park for the anniversary. How exciting. As we make our way to the docks and talk to the captain that takes the boat to Haruba Desert, our boat almost dies because of this water pillar, so we head under the sea to investigate. And to no surprise, Team Dim Sum is already there, up to no good, and they're trying to capture a Wailord, and he's unable to move from these beam thingies. So we make this a mission and rescue the Wailord. We capture some Pokemon to destroy the beams while also chasing Team Dim Sum, and we actually end up freeing the Wailord, only for Team Dim Sum to take his Wailmer friend. The Wailord chases after Dim Sum and takes us to this oil rig previously owned by Ultra Incorporated. Turns out Sven is here. What a quinky dink. He asks for our help and makes his detour from the mission in the desert because it's like a life or death situation. Not really, he just has a hunch and we can learn some info here. As we explore the rig, we discover that this is where they've been making the Mini Remo units. I get lost in this place, but eventually we walk through a door that has a ton of grunts, and they panic and end up shoving us out of the room and lock the door so we can't get in. But we do notice that there's this very small hole that connects the rooms. If you know what I'm thinking, it's skunk tank time. As we make our way through the rig looking for a skunk tank, we find Isaac in the library. He begs for our help because he thinks Sven is going to beat him up. But really, he begged us to take him when we mentioned Professor Hastings. Turns out, the room with the skunk tank is actually a part of Isaac's research to create nice-smelling perfume from nasty odors. We capture one and make our way back to the hole, send in the stink bomb, and out comes the grunts. On our way to the main room of this rig, we get a very odd voicemail from Keith, or should I say, vicemail. We continue on and find Kincaid once again, and he complains about how awful his subordinates are. Glad I don't have to deal with his negativity. He sends Gliscor at us, and once we capture it, the building starts to shake, and it's the whale lord ramming himself into the rig to save his friend. Kincaid runs, leaving his subordinates behind, and the whalemar goes to his friend. After watching the whole ordeal, Isaac is starting to put two and two together, realizing that Kincaid lied to him and told him that the incredible machine was to promote friendship with Pokemon and people. We see a cutscene of Wailord absolutely ramming into Kincaid's bubble, and he maybe dies. I don't know, but we don't see him again. We rank up to Ranger rank 8, and Sven takes us to the desert on his boat and takes Isaac back to the Union with him. At the desert, there's this wicked sandstorm going on, and as we enter Haruba village, we see this family selling espresso with the littlest taste of oil, and it's actually just a Gigarimo machine, so we destroy it on them, destroying their espresso business, and the sandstorm actually calms down. The Hippowdon temple is actually pretty straightforward as well. I remembered it as being more complicated, but once we enter, we have to walk across some moving sand, which was annoying because these giant sandballs were falling and they kept hitting me and knocking me over, and it was really annoying. But then we hop around on some leaves again, make it down to the boss room. The whole time, while we were making our way through the temple, we kept getting these odd voicemails from Keith telling us to hurry. The boss for the yellow gem is a Cresselia. I remember having the most difficulty with this one for the first time I played this game, but it was actually one of the easier ones. The only hard part was the orbs that spawn that go around the border, but other than that, it was pretty easy. But we grabbed the yellow gem and realized there's no sign of Keith at all. Surely we would have seen him by now. We hear the sounds of a helicopter approaching, and I don't know how, but it plops down, and it's the other member of the trio, Heath, and he's yellow. Turns out they kidnapped Keith and tied him just a smidgen on the tight side, and made us do all their work. He proposes to trade Keith for the yellow gem, and I have tried to say no, but you can't, even though they give you the option, but we actually have to be a good person and save him. So he drops Keith, takes the gem, and sends a Magnezone at us. Keith decides to go back to the Ranger Union on his own because he's embarrassed. Well, he didn't say that, but I'm assuming. He always leaves us. We inform Irma and Hastings about what happened, and they're just glad that we're safe. The next day, Professor Hastings says he has yet to find out any info on the blueprints Sven's found because it's password protected and Isaac has become withdrawn. Which is understandable. Isaac looked up to Kincaid and has become faced with the horror that his idol was lying to him and using Isaac for his own gain. But Isaac tells us the password and Hastings gets right to work. The giant shadow crystal that Dimson has taken is placed on top Ultra Tower, and the incredible machine is the tower. So the game plan is to just assault the tower with the two gems that we do have. So, being losers, Irma and Hastings pick Wendy and Sven to each carry a gem and fly on Staraptors to get as close to the crystal as possible. And Keith and I are on Union protection. Yay! The boring job. So Wendy and Sven head off, and Keith and I just sit around until there's a rumble, and Murph comes running up that there's some intruders in the Union. We head to the bottom floor, and Heath is back. He sends an Electabuzz, and we easily capture him, and then there's an even bigger rumble coming from upstairs. So we declare it a mission and head up the stairs. And then there's that giant hole in the wall. Ice is here, and they're trying to take Isaac back from us because he knows how to operate the incredible machine, and they need someone to fine-tune it. Lavana brings in Melody, Isaac's little sister who he loves dearly, and threatens to hurt her if Isaac doesn't go with them. So, with the tough choice, he goes with. Keith does nothing, of course, and Garchomp comes at us. We barely capture him because he was a tough boy. Murph comes in running again, and there's a strange guy now on the top floor. It's Wheeler, Blake Hall's little minion, and he just has a Bidoof obsession, so I just caught these guys with one circle. All of the bad guys have left, and we need to rethink our plan. Our main goal being switched to save Isaac and Melody. So, Keith and I storm the tower. YOLO! So, going through the Ultra Tower, we fight grunts. A lot. And it's tedious, and we have to climb through the elevator because the grunts decided to break the elevator on us. And we reached civilization. Just kidding, the 9th floor. And we overhear some dim sum grunts mentioning that the yellow gem is here, locked behind a door. And the only way to unlock it is to defeat the dim sum admins hidden in the different rooms. One guy was hiding in the bathroom stall, so we started a fire, lured him out with the sprinklers. Another was hidden in a dark room, hiding behind some boxes. One was in the library, and the last one was in a very messy lab. And then the door unlocked. We went to grab the yellow gem. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. We go up the stairs to the 10th floor. The grunts were waiting for us. When we beat them up, and after looking around, we find that Isaac is locked in a room. Keith and I are unable to break down the door using a Pokemon, or even ourselves. We tried. So we call in the one man we know who can break down a door, no prob. Our former leader, Barlow. And he's here in like 0.5 seconds and breaks it down combined with our strength. We save Isaac and Melody after brawling with more grunts. Melody goes with Barlow back to safety, and Isaac comes with us to help stop the incredible machine. We fight a lot of grunts, again, and make it to a platform at the semi-top of the tower. This is where we break off with Keith. He jumps on Staraptor with the yellow gem to meet up with Wendy and Sven. Levana shows up with Meg Mortar as soon as Keith hops on the Staraptor and just yeets him out of existence, dropping the yellow gem, and she takes it. The incredible machine's power was turned on, and we only have until midnight to stop it. I don't even know what time it is in the game, so I couldn't tell you what impending time pressure that we have. Since we have held all the gems previously, our styler gets upgraded to this really fancy styler that only we have, and we can actually catch mind-controlled Pokemon in the wild now. Neat. Wendy sends us a voicemail explaining about this barrier protecting the incredible machine, saying that it has 3 layers, and each layer is controlled on separate floors. So this is where we fight each member of the trio once and for all, starting off with Heath. Hyperior was actually not that bad of a fight. I beat him first try, and Heath runs off, and Isaac looks at the computer, controlling the yellow layer of the barrier, and disarms it, so now we can finish it off with a field move. So 1 layer down, 2 to go. The next layer is Levana. She's an icon. And sends her Meg Mortar that absolutely rolled Keith at us, and he was even easier. I didn't lose any health at all. So suck it, Levana. She tells us she doesn't have the yellow gem anymore and leaves. So we destroy the barrier and head up to the next level. Last but not least is Ice. His Gallade was tough, but these boss fights weren't actually that bad. However, his computer was more beefy, and Isaac had a hard time cracking it. So while he was working at that, the trio came back, sends all of their Pokemon at me, and oh my god, it was not fun. I hate capturing multiple Pokemon at one time just because there's so much movement, it makes it really hard. But I did it. We break the final barrier, Ice gives us back the yellow gem, and the tower has reached power level 2 out of 3. And it's gaining power fast. We're given a cutscene showing this dark shadow surrounded by some Gigarimos. What could that mean? We see a lot of Pokemon in the region controlled by the tower already, and even the mini Remo machines can't control them. We enter a room with an electric floor and a computer. Isaac just walks into a trap to disarm the floor for us and gets trapped behind the barrier. He tells us to keep going, and he'll figure out a way. The incredible machine's power reaches level 3, and we can see that the machine's power reaches all the way to Hia Valley, Boyle Volcano, and even Haruba Desert. At the top of the tower, we see Blake Hall, his minion, and Heath. Blake tells us that we are too late. Says all of the Pokemon in the Almia region are under his control, and the Dream Energy Machine is controlled by Pokemon. Wheeler tries to attack us, but he's a Bidoof guy, and you know how that goes. Blake Hall summons a Pokemon using his new machine, and he goes crazy with power. The Shadow Crystal glows, and we see a Dusknoir from the desert make its way to us. He tells us he just used Kincaid to infiltrate the school to find smart geniuses like Isaac for his master plan, so really it's just a cycle of people using each other. Munchlax came in clutch for this boss fight. Whenever we use him, our capture line is extended, so it makes it much easier to circle him when he's got the purple flames around him. Blake Hall tells us that he's already won, but we pull out the yellow gem, and Blake Hall gets very upset at his minions. In order for his plan to work, they only needed to keep 1 gem away from the crystal. And they failed. Our fellow rangers pull up to the scene now, Wendy and Sven. It's about time, honestly. They pull out their gems, and they all start to glow. Blake Hall goes to his machine and summons the strongest Pokemon of them all. The one he's he's been cultivating in the black smoke. It makes all the Pokemon scared. Darkrai. Darkrai appears out of the black fog, and Blake Hall sends it after us and tries to swallow us whole in the black fog. And finally, Keith is useful. Pulls us out, saving us, and we pass him the gem so he can meet up with Wendy and Sven. Blake Hall ups his machine to the forbidden power level dark, and it looks bad. He sends Darkrai after us again, but Darkrai seems to have a mind of its own, swallows Wheeler, and then Blake Hall is confused as heck. Bye-bye, Wheeler. R.I.P. The crystal that Blake Hall used to control the machine broke and went to swallow up Blake himself. He tries to escape, but to no avail. Darkrai is too strong. We see some dialogue that Blake Hall and Wheeler are essentially in a nightmare realm, and all they can see is darkness. We try to capture Darkrai, but it isn't possible. No matter how many times we circle, the bar isn't going up. Darkrai kicks us back, and the gems start to glow again, and the glowiness wraps around us and interact with our styler. Now, our styler has been upgraded due to the light, so we try Darkrai again, and this time, we can actually get the bar up. Being a final boss fight, it was tough. It took a lot of tries, but we managed to capture Darkrai and calm him down. The darkness around the towers lifted, and Wendy and Sven took the gems around the Shadow Crystal, and it purified it, and became a nice, very pretty, clear gem that shined brightly over the whole region. Darkrai brings Blake Hall and Wheeler back, and then leaves. Hastings and Barlow show up, and Hastings gives us the juicy backstory for Blake Hall. It's actually kind of sad. Hastings returns the diary we've been using back to Blake and reads the last excerpt. Brighton was tempted by the dark stones and felt the darkness in his heart, but was unable to reach the Shadow Crystal due to Darkrai. But he was so fascinated with it, he researched and discovered the 3 colored gems and just became too obsessed with it. He even ignored his son. We also learned that Blake Hall's real name is actually Wyatt. And on his 14th birthday, Brighton changed the name of his son to Blake for the Shadow Crystal and held a ceremony basically sacrificing his child to the crystal. He exchanged his son for the Shadow Crystal's power to flow through Wyatt, and his son became blinded in the darkness, and in turn strived toward the whole incredible machine thing. Brighton writes that the crystal took the darkness from people's hearts and reused it as energy, so Wyatt/Blake was filled with that darkness, and Brighton did everything he could to save his son, because he realized his mistakes but ultimately failed before his passing. However, we called this whole operation Operation Brighton after his father. Using the information in Brighton's diary, we never would have found the info we did, and in the end, Brighton did manage to save his son. And it's mission clear. Everything goes back to the way it was, and we enjoy the Go Rock Quad's tunes in the Altru Park with all of our friends, and Altru Tower shines brightly in a good way. And that is Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia, one of the greatest Pokemon games ever. My first Ranger game and one of my top games ever. I've replayed this game maybe 5 times now, and every time is just as good as the first. The Ranger games put their own spin on the Pokemon franchise, and they are truly amazing games. So, I leave it at that. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed our journey together through the Almia region. In Pokemon Ranger, Shadows of Almia.